Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Right now, get a free select tool when you buy the Craftsman V20 2-pack battery kit. Whether it's the backyard, the bathroom, or beyond, Craftsman has the tools to help you power through and get the project done right. Because DIYing is unpredictable, but your tools shouldn't be. Shop Craftsman at Lowe's today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Bleav.
Doesn't matter if you were an Indian or if you're a Warhawk.
The ULM mention is the greatest. You'd hope for the best as a ULM fan, but
this is the Bleav in the Warhawks podcast with hosts Dusty Thibodeaux and Chase Regian.
Chase, you always have such great insight.
I'm just going to bleep it all.
What are these guys always talking about?
We talk a lot about food on this podcast, and I'm going to continue to do so.
Really, really appreciative of the people and the community and the way that they've backed us up.
Nailed the introduction, by the way. Awesome.
Thanks,
I love
Fish.
it. Chase, back in the day, even though you were at a small school like ULM,
mid-major, but yeah, I'm with you.
Did you have the fear of getting called into compliance over something you said or something you did? Like that maybe you got the cream cheese on your bagel that was against the rules?
Well, considering nobody paid me to go to ULM, I wasn't really, we had to deal with, no offense to our future guest here, we had to deal with compliance when you were, once a year, and then they come and yell at you at the beginning of the year of don't be stupid, and then you kind of just move on.
Like trying to fight the entire Georgia Southern school.
Yeah, thankfully it's not really a compliance issue. It's more of a character and coaching issue, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that was considered extra benefits when you picked up one of the canned beverages that were being hurled your way or something like that.
I did not do that. That was an unnamed offensive lineman a few years ago at Texas State.
Although I will say the best story still is playing at Lafayette, and someone in the student section chunked an entire pizza, uneaten pizza, onto the sideline. And of course, Jaron Johnson goes over, I need a snack, and grabs half of it, shoves it in, and goes in for the next play.
Yeah, the first thing in my head was I wonder how much turf was on it, so could you eat it or not? But
mid-game
big
snack.
Thoughts. Yeah.
So you alluded to our guest, Director of Compliance for ULM, Cody Sparrow, comes to us on the Bayou. You've been here just over a year, coming in from Idaho State. Cody, welcome into the madness that is Bleav in the Warhawks.
Well, thanks for having me. So Bleav in it. Bleav in it. That's what you got to do.
That's right.
You got to believe in it.
Cody, shout out. Thanks, Cody.
So, Cody, I think when people hear compliance, they think automatically back to the good old Pony Express days of, a payroll to make, the more recent unnamed bright orange school that was handing out McDonald's bags of cash. But what does compliance really mean when it comes to college athletics?
It's amazing because when people ask me this question, you the first thing they say is you just are there to keep the kids eligible and not do stupid stuff. And in all reality, compliance is really working with the coaches, the student athletes, just to navigate what policies, procedures you got to not only obey from the institution, the state, federally, but the NCAA as well. There's a lot of reporting. There's a lot of keeping up on the changes. I mean, the NCAA, since I've been in this, it seems like we had one system for a while that you would change a policy or a bylaw and it'd be a full year process to do it. Now it's you go to sleep one day and you wake up and there's a whole new system or a whole new bylaw that you got to go by. So keeping everybody informed. Obviously, at the NCAA level, they are very data driven. So you do a lot of reports on certain things. A lot of people I always hear, violations are bad. You're going to have violations. You can't. I mean, when I was at Idaho State, we had a university policy and it went against the NCAA policy and we had to choose which one did we follow, so we broke the NCAA policy on something very simple and follow the university policy or the state policy. And we just reported a violation and said, hey, our state, this is the requirement. And the NCAA just said, all right, move on. So it's more or less those mistakes in the world of compliance. I always say something that happens at work is a mistake. Ours is called a violation. And it just kind of gets out there. So it's not the bad people usually. We're usually the ones that are trying to fix everything behind the scenes.
Yeah, I know you've got some crazy stories, and I know you can't tell us. That's the worst part, So what a catch-22 of a guest, Cody. But how long have you been doing this? You came from Idaho State. This isn't really like. I also want to ask, like, what got you into this? It seems some people find what you do is like scary or scared to do it type stuff. Like, what got you into this? How long have you been doing it?
Yeah, so when I did my undergraduate in sports management, you had to do an internship, and so I did it in compliance office. I'm more of an internal guy, not an external guy so much. I'm not creative. So when I did it, I just love the fact that you were involved in everywhere. It wasn't like I was just funneled into one area. I worked with student athletes, I worked with coaches, and then you work with every staff member. It's, everywhere on campus, you kind of get a hand in all those different areas. So it's not like you're really funneled into one little area. Because I'm going to work with the marketing department. I'm going to work with development. I'm going to be working with, the athletic director. Or, we kind of before we started, we were talking about Title IX. You're going to work with the Title IX office on some of the regulations that need to be done. So for me, I enjoyed my internship, but that's not the way I went right out of my first job. I was actually an academic advisor, and I kind of missed working on the compliance side. And so I went back to school, did my business degree back at Idaho State. At that point, I got back in. So for the last 10 years, I've been in compliance. The last 6 years, I've been the head compliance we call it a shop pretty much, the head compliance officer within the athletic department. And then obviously I moved here, kind of moving up from an FCS school to an FBS school. There's some changes. I didn't have baseball at Idaho State, so that's a kind of a different change in some of those policies. So it was just an opportunity for me to kind of move up to the next level. John Hartwell and I kind of knew some acquaintance together, applied for the job. He kind of called some people on me, and that's how I ended up here in the Bayou and here at ULM. Just my first day on the job was our first football game. I flew in the night before and started the next day.
Wild start to a job for a compliance officer.
Definitely.
But you get some cool teas during the games.
That was the Jackson State game too, where it was delayed. It was they were trying to push it up. They tried to delay it. The back and forth.
I heard a bunch of issues with their band and then them filming and all different kinds of stuff, dude. What a nightmare, Cody.
Yeah. So when I got here, there was no time. I went to my first meeting, and we were making sure every player was ready to go and was cleared to play. So, when you don't have somebody on hand right on campus, there is some things that are hardships to kind of get done. So that first day was a whirlwind to get through and get to that game and all the changes that were happening. So
Cody, it's a new day and age here in the NCAA where, especially with this house settlement, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, now you can have unlimited scholarships. Kind of. It's more about the roster spots that are capped. What are the big differences that really kind of came out of this, and how do they kind of come home and apply to ULM?
Yeah, I think the big thing like you said, the big thing that came out of this is the NCAA has always had a scholarship limit. This eliminated the scholarship limit, and everybody now has a roster limit that you got to go by. And that roster limit's going to change, right? For right now, we've got the roster limits, but the court system kind of came back after, in April and said, hey, you need to go fix some stuff. And so now we got some grandfathering in that we got to do for the next 3 or 4 years. It's like COVID. Some kids are going to be labeled as a roster designated person that you can go over the roster limit for. But the big part, I think, goes back to that scholarship aspect. The NCAA had limits on scholarships. So, like football had 85 at the FBS level. men's basketball had 13, women's basketball had 15. Here now, you just got a roster limit, but every kid now can be on scholarship. So it does provide the opportunities for kids to all get that. Everybody now, we had the equivalency to head count. A head count sport, if you gave them $1, counted as that whole scholarship. Where equivalency, you could break up the scholarship. Now schools like us can break up those scholarships to give everybody a piece of the pie. Obviously, the bigger schools, they might be going to full everybody on scholarship. So everybody's going to get their academics paid for that way. So budgets will play a big part of those things, but the roster limit is kind of the big thing. That kind of came out of this as far as, a lot of areas are concerned, and a lot of feedback that came back from students like, hey, I'm being cut because I don't have a spot on the team anymore because of a roster limit. When we talk about roster limit, really, baseball had the 40-man roster that you had to, you had a name, but you may have more people on your roster at the time, but then you had to put in, here's your 40-man roster. The only other sport that actually had a roster limit was football, that you could only have 120 people once you started the season, and then you could add them after, midway through the year. You could do walk-ons and all that. Every other sport, you could really have as many people as you wanted on the team. You just had the scholarship limit. Now you're going to kind of move that down a little bit, which for ULM, it's not, in our studies, it's not going to be a huge change. Obviously football going from 120 to 105, baseball moving down to the 34 limit. Most of the other sports were probably right at or under the roster limit. So it's not a huge change for us outside of those two sports. Other aspects that come in through the settlement is obviously now universities can give some revenue share, can pay the student directly for the name, image, and likeness, which beforehand you were not able to do. So that's the biggest part that you hear of the money side is coming from that side of, hey, now people can pay them, but there's some things that we're going to have to track on that, and student athletes going to have to submit, some of their deals that they get through name, image, likeness. If they're over $600, it has to go through the clearinghouse that both parties agree to. So there's got to be a true business purpose with that, and then obviously the rev share, students being able to gain some of that money. The cap that people are talking about, the $20.5 million that's there, that over the next 10 years may raise up to about $32.5 million, but it kind of puts some money back in the kid's pocket through, universities using them to gain money as a business.
So what I heard out of that is that I can now legally get my Chase Regian jersey.
That's not how you say my last name, Cody. It's Regian. And I wish I had played long enough to get all that settlement and stuff like that. I have a question. I have two questions actually, because I know Tibbs gets real nerdy about this stuff, and I probably should too. But so it sounds like, do you think that they are adding a little structure? I know a lot of fans, including myself, have really called for some structured NIL. It felt like the Wild Wild West. Do you think we're edging towards a way that the NCAA works with athletes and NIL and universities to create a structured system to get them paid?
Yeah, so it is a very much structured system now, and it's not only the NCAA working, right? This is coming from a federal court, so it's kind of becoming more federal law of like, hey, this has got to be documented. And I kind of, I think the other aspects that a lot of people don't talk about is for these student athletes, they're earning money. It's taxable money, and so there's some other things that come into play that from a federal government side, they kind of needed to have some system to be able to track who's getting paid. And really some of these things that we pay as employees of a university, as anybody has a job. And so now they're being reported. So there is a structure to that. There's also this company, they'll be, regulating and making sure what your true value kind of is, how many followers you have on social media, the impact that you have. That's what they're geared towards. And so there'll be structure with kind of going through that. Obviously, $600 isn't a ton of money, so most kids are going to have to submit all their deals. Otherwise, it could become into a federal eligibility issue that you won't be able to play, or we don't know those type of things yet if they don't report. But there will be some, as we say, violations or sanctions. They may not be. The word I heard is they're not violations, but there will be consequences the student athletes who don't submit this, as it is a federal mandate. So there will be a structure to NIL now when it comes through the third parties. And then we got to actually do two systems. We're going to be doing one that's from the university side that is paying, but if it's a third party outside the university, that'll be a different system that will be reported through.
My next question is, so break down the 105 for me. Is that just scholarship athletes? I'm talking about just football because I'm stupid in anything other than football. Is 105 just, scholarship athletes? Do we kill walk-ons but increase the number of scholarships totals you can have?
So I think if you break it down better like this, so beforehand you had 120 kids, but only 85 kids could be on scholarship. Well, now, yeah, we go down in the number of kids, but that scholarship limit for a lot of institutions, especially the Power Four, they're going from 85 to 105 scholarships. So there'll be 105 scholarships now. So theoretically, those kids that were walk-ons can now get scholarships. Obviously, a school like ULM, we necessarily can't raise our scholarships. I'm hearing some schools that got to raise with the roster limits. They're going to, that's going to increase $5.5 million on their scholarship books. Schools like us can't do that. So now that true walk-on kid, because you couldn't give them a scholarship, can now get an athletic scholarship. Or like in our case, we got those 85 scholarships. We can divide that up between 105 kids. So if kids get some academic aid, got scholarships academically that you can tie into, now we can break up that scholarship. So 88, 90 kids can get a piece of the pie and just not 85. So I hope that can
that did it perfect. That sounds like a lot of work for you, my friend.
Yeah. So I think for us, we used to have to worry so much about the equivalency, right? Where were you at equivalency and you don't go over? Here now, the equivalency, everybody is an equivalent sport, but everybody can be on aid. So you no longer have to worry about that dollar amount now. In the internal world, we do have to worry about that old number because that's part of the rev share plan of how many more scholarships did we add, go over. But you no longer have to worry about, are you under the dollar amount or over the dollar amount for equivalency? Now everybody can be on it. So you can have whatever the dollar amount is for a scholarship, everyone can be on it and you're good. So.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
For fans wanting more than just the score, Warhawk Report dives deeper into ULM athletics with expert analysis, recruiting updates, behind-the-scenes access, and real-time updates. Whether you are a die-hard fan or just curious about the Warhawks, we've got you covered. Subscribe today at warhawkreport.com. Smart coverage, real insights, all Warhawks. warhawkreport.com.
Well, as much of a mess as that is there, Cody, there's also portal where I no longer have to sit out if I transfer. But there's definitely the ramifications of me transferring out. So if I'm at ULM, I decide, hey, this just isn't for me. I want to be closer to home, or I want to go somewhere where I can play. What does that look like to kind of enter the portal, and what do kids go through when they're in the portal?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the transfer portal is the student athletes have got to understand the consequences they're making, right? And by consequences, the choices that they got to make. Obviously, if they decide they want to enter the portal, the first conversation they got to have is with me or my staff of, hey, I want to enter the portal. We've had kids. They necessarily don't have to tell their coach they're entering the portal. Under the old previous bylaws of 8-9 years ago, you had to give permission and you had to grant that permission as an institution. Now, if a student wants to enter the portal, they can come in and fill out the documentation. And within 2 business days, I've got to put them in the transfer portal. It's not a conversation the coach can say, hey, I want to deny him or not. Those days are long gone. So kid enters the portal, they come in. We have some online forms they got to do. The NCAA has a little educational video. And really the biggest part you want to let kids know is, hey, if you decide to enter the portal, it kind of is able for the institution to also cut a lot of its institutional aid to you. Scholarship limits or the scholarship can be cut at the end of the term. Obviously, there's risk on an institution if you're going to use their weight room and some of those locker room dynamics. Hey, I'm entering the portal. Well, some coaches don't want those kids around their team anymore because they're looking to leave. So are we going to use all our resources? So there's some things that from an institutional standpoint, when it comes to academics, you don't ever cut that aspect out. But a lot of times you start cutting out some of the athletic side of things on that. So that's kind of what a video the NCAA makes each student go through. It's about a 5-minute video. It's listed on the NCAA website module to be able to watch. The big part with the transfer portal, though, is academics. Obviously classes that you take don't transfer from ULM to another institution or from another institution to us. So that's a big question for kids academically is, hey, if you're going to transfer and you're going to multiple transfer now, how long is it going to take you to finish up your degree? Or can you even earn that degree and stay within the academic eligibility? So that's transferring out is pretty simple. Kids come and visit with us. We get them in the portal during that transfer window. Kids come into us. Obviously, we got to do some checking from the other institution, like how many years of seasons of eligibility. You got to still meet all the academic side of things. So you're going to work with the previous institution. And that's where the transfer portal has really been a blessing for compliance people is now it's all on one system. You're not doing paper copies and emailing them back and forth. It's a system that you can get right on into. And from a coaching standpoint, it's a great tool to be able to get a list of people really who's in the portal that you may know. The portal is kind of a unique thing. You can break it down by conference. You can break it down by school. You can break it down by sport. So there's a lot of information in there. Obviously, coaches only see one portion of it. Compliance kind of sees all the academic side. And seasons of eligibility and those kind of areas. But so that's kind of how the system works. I've had kids come in all the time like, hey, can I change my position on the portal? Can I upload game film? It's not a system that stuff's kept. It's more or less, are you academically eligible? Are you eligible athletically to go somewhere else and play? And allows the coach to have that information. It's not a system that is utilized to upload game film or anything like that. But players think it is. They're like, hey, I want to add my film to that. Well, it's not a recruiting service that way. It's just your name's in there and basic information of your history as a student athlete, of what schools you've attended and how many seasons you used and all that.
They want to go back and have another huddle profile. On that note, it seemed like this past year, and this isn't specific to ULM, but I saw it a lot in several Sunbelt schools. How the hell were some guys entering the portal that had already played 6 years of college basketball?
To be honest, I think what we were kind of told, not necessarily from a conference standpoint, but kind of a general rule of thumb was, hey, if the kid we didn't know with the Pavia, the lawsuits were out there. If a kid wanted to enter the portal, put them on the portal and just make a note like, hey, they may need an extension waiver if they want this. So from that standpoint, I think a lot of compliance, a lot of schools would even tell the kid, hey, you're not eligible. But to avoid some of these legal lawsuits, they just put them on the portal and just made a note like, hey, would need an extension waiver. They don't meet the 5-year clock or they don't meet an automatic extension. And that's just been, a whirlwind with itself with the Pavia waiver that came out. I think a lot of people right at first thought, oh, it's like the COVID year, you just got an extra year extension. Well, it wasn't an extra year extension. You still had to meet your clock and all that. So, every school dealt with it. I think we put people on there that wanted to go somewhere that, technically exhausted eligibility. We just made the notes and let the kid be on and let them have conversations. I know kids that I've worked with in the past that actually got signed. And I'm like, how is that kid going somewhere? Because there's nowhere they can go. I did a waiver for that kid and so forth. So it's the way it goes.
Cody, you mentioned academic transferring, and that's something I've always been interested in looking at. What are the current 4-year graduation rates? They've got to drop with how much we see, student athletes going to the portal. But is that something NCAA even cares about anymore? Like, how do you configure your APR and how do you work to help, kids that are going to transfer 3 or 4 times? How do you get them degrees, which is, let's not forget one of the biggest reasons to go play college football.
Yeah. So Chase, you can actually probably be shocked, but your graduation rates are up with college athletics. Now, the difference I would say,
a big argument of mine, Cody, dang it.
Yeah. So, but Chase, I think the biggest part you got to think of is the degrees kids are getting, especially especially sports like football, basketballs that, kids are transferring multiple times. The degree they might have started out at their first school, hey, I'm going to be a business major or a psychology major. But a lot of kids it's the degree type they're going to get the university studies kind of degree, something that has a lot of electives that you can kind of plug into there. So I think on that side, from a standpoint, I think the NCAA, they are concerned about the academics, right? They know kids are graduating, but there's some tools out there. But I think from a university standpoint, that's kind of the question you're going to get from presidents and the academic people now, maybe even at the legislative level, is these kids are being funneled kind of into these university studies programs because it's the easiest thing to keep them academically eligible. Programs that are very structured that have, hey, you got to get these courses and these courses, but you have very limited electives. Kids that transfer multiple times will not be able to be in those programs because you can't academically get them in there unless you do an academic waiver. So that's kind of where the academic piece is probably at the most, is that the standards are still there. They're still going to be tracking on them. We're still graduating kids at a high rate under the NCAA. In fact, I want to say it's the highest it's been. It's still increasing that kids are graduating. The difference is what probably degrees did they start out in to what degree are they actually going to get. So,
Cody, you're a big guy. I know you got a little bit of agility there. What's your background? Did you play football somewhere?
I did not. So in high school, I kind of got the recruiting things from small junior colleges. But the kind of the story with that is my senior year, Boise State ended up actually taking this guy, but I was a receiver, I was a safety. So I wasn't as big back then as I am now. And I was a punter, and I punted the ball, and I hit this kid so hard, and literally my shoulder got dislocated, and I might have moved him a yard. That's when I found out when you're a college player, it's a different story, because that kid, he blew me up. On the video, you watch it, and my shoulder flies out of place. So really with all that, it just kind of, my season ended as a senior, small little junior colleges kind of looked at you, but other than that, so I just kind of, hey, I'm going to go the academic route. And I never thought I was going to go into college athletics, but then it became, I started in physical therapy program and said, this isn't for me. I'm a sports kind of guy. I got to kind of go into sports and not be a physical therapist. So I totally changed that way. So that's kind of my background, is I kind of grew up in the, not an athlete, but around it all from day one.
I was going to be a nurse until chemistry and risk management came about. That was a career change for me.
Mine was the anatomy class. I got an anatomy and thought, man, I don't want to be doing all this. And if I'm going to go to school, I got to do something I love to do. So,
love that. Mine was, I want to be a doctor, and then I failed biology 1001. And my wife became a doctor, so it's all good. Still around.
Chase loves to throw that out there. But
I do throw that out there a lot. I'm sorry. Yeah, but when you ride coattails these big, you're pretty proud of them.
True enough. So, Cody, you get to work with all the coaches there across the board. Who's the best, and who's the one you're like, God, this guy's calling me again?
It probably depends on the year or the time frame of the year. Obviously, there's time frames where you're going to hear from coaches every day because in their world, they're trying to get kids cleared. They're trying to get recruited. Is this kid eligible? Are they not eligible? Are they fit? So at that point, you starting to get bugged down by coaches, and you're like, I hope I don't hear from that coach today. But overall, our coaches are great. They're supportive. You can pick up the phone. You can call them. They give you time to do the job. Yeah, they want, coaches kind of want the stuff yesterday that they're asking today. But I just think you got to kind of work with them. And I've never had a bad issue with coaches. I've had coaches still call me from different institutions that I've worked with that they're run stuff by me to, hey, what is your thought on this? Can this kid come and play? Can he not play? Some of the coaches that I've worked with have moved on to junior college, and they'll call me and say, hey, I've got this player that's a D1 caliber player. I just want some advice on how to make sure I advise him right here at the junior college so he can go play D1. So, we're all in this to kind of work together. So I think all coaches are great. All coaches probably get bugged by me when I'm asking for certain things, and I get bugged by them when, they don't give me enough time to get my job done either. So,
dang, Tibbs, Martin got to him, dude. Martin got to him before you could ask that question. 100%.
But let me tell you this, though, Cody. Surely, whenever Scotty, the women's basketball coach, Scotty Fletcher, calls you, it's a very short conversation because that dude is all just cranked up to 100 at all hours every day.
When he does call, it is a short conversation. It's usually in and out, and this is what I need. This is what we're looking to do. What can we do? And we're moving on. I've always been kind of the guy that's at Idaho State. They wanted a foreign tour, and we had to do a waiver. And so I made a deal with the coach that if I got the kid eligible, he had to pay for me to go on the foreign tour. Sure enough, the day I got the waiver through, I called him, and he called the AD and said, hey, I made a deal with him. He's going on the foreign tour, and I'm paying for it. So I'm a guy that likes to work those deals out. It's not always the foreign tour, but hey, if coaches want the best of us, give us some gear. Give us something that decorates our office or something to help us out.
Here comes Chase saying, I need a hat.
I'm the guy that will do that.
Yeah,
I do that. They'll come to my office, say, hey, I need this. And, for baseball, say that, hey, that's a good looking hat you have. I need one of those. So,
dang, dude. And all I do is just talk every week on a very mediocre podcast about ULM. And then I don't get anything. Maybe I need some leverage.
You got to get some leverage there, Chase.
So you also have a new boss's boss, so to say there. Dr. Camille Castile takes over the presidency. What's your interaction and what's your kind of role of advising or even interacting with that office?
Yeah, so I think this is probably what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of athletic compliance actually do not report to the athletic director directly. We kind of have a dotted line. So I actually report to the university president here. Speaking of that, I've never met her yet. I've been out of town at 2 conferences back to back. So I haven't really met to her, but that's who my actual direct report is to the president. So my interactions at Idaho State here with Dr. Berry, Dr. Bruno, I meet with them. There's some attestations that they got to make sure things are done. So my job is just to keep them informed of what's going on within the athletic department. Sometimes I'll get a call saying, hey, we need this information. Can you provide? What does this mean? What is it like? Obviously, I've worked with now, I think I'm on my 5th president. So maybe I'm the president killer here at Idaho State. Actually, it's 6. To tell you the truth, it's 6 presidents I've worked for under my time in compliance. But one of them was very heavily involved in athletics at Boise State. He was the general counsel before at Boise State, and he kind of oversaw the athletics. So he was very well aware of that. Other presidents, I've had one that's like, I have no clue what totally you do. You just tell me what I need to know, and we'll go from there. So I think each one comes with their own different things of how they want to run it. But that's my direct report. So yeah, I could get a call and say, hey, bring this information to my office and let's have a discussion, or hey, just tell me what violations we've had. What did we have to do to correct them and move on? Or, hey, what do I got to sign off on? And what does some of this academic data mean? Or what does some of this data mean that we're getting emailed about? Can you just explain it to me at a 30,000 feet level? So for me, she's my boss. She's actually the one that signs my time card and all that.
She's all our bosses. And I don't even work for ULM.
Yeah. So
Cody, we talked about portal also a little bit. Of course, when you have a coaching change like we had in baseball, everybody under the sun, I think even the SID Martin entered the portal to, leave the Bayou. What does that number kind of look like? And is that something that is or should be public information or public knowledge?
I think for kids' data status point, I think you kind of leave that in there, them to release on their own statements. I mean, obviously, every kid, it seems like they enter the portal. Before I even enter them in the portal, they announce on social media, hey, I'm going in the portal, I'm transferring. So it's already out there. I think when you talk about like the baseball situation with many kids entering the portal, I think when you have a coaching change, and we've had 4 of them here, right? We had volleyball, we had the 2 basketballs, baseball. So our number is inflated because of that. Every time you have a coaching change, just expect more kids going to enter the portal because their coach just left, especially if they're the ones that recruited them. So you always expect that at that point. This year, I think with the money that was out there, the rev share being brought in, obviously people wanted to really test that market because it was an opportunity to go get that deal. Kids that maybe here, it's like coaches. If you're already here, you're not really going to see what your market is. So as much as it became a free agency almost time period for kids, a lot of kids kind of maybe entered the portal just because, hey, what am I able to get out there on the market? And then we had 4, fairly decent big coaching changes. I know the year before when they had the football change, there was quite a bit of people in there. So we're probably inflated for the Sun Belt on the amount of kids that we have in there. I mean, we're above 100 kids that are entered the portal. Obviously, some of those kids for baseball are starting to pull themselves out now that we've got a coach and trying to, meet with him and like, hey, I do want to come back. But if you enter the portal, that's up to a coach's decision. I always say if a kid enters the portal, it's a coach, the head coach, the sport administrator, and the athletic director can make the decision if they want that kid back on the team or not. So kind of the thing. I think at times maybe it would be okay to be public knowledge out there. But other times you don't necessarily want, it's just a name out there on the portal. There's a lot of sites that do that. But obviously you don't want people to access that transfer portal page because there is some FERPA information that you just don't want leaked on kids' academics or something like that. Or if there was an issue that arose, a Title IX violation that maybe occurred with that kid, you kind of list that on there. You don't want public knowledge of those kind of things. So that side of piece needs to be kind of kept private.
But is ULM deemed if say I was a baseball player, I entered the portal because of the coaching change, but I come back, is ULM deemed at all for anything I did, or is it kind of no harm, no foul type situation?
No harm, no foul. I think, and maybe this was before we got on, just the conversation we had about APR. There is some changes that have to be made. NCAA made some changes right away when the transfer portal opened on how you calculate APR for a kid that transfers. Now it was, hey, you just got to be eligible if you went to a 4-year school. We saw some of if a kid transfers from a 4-year to a 2-year, there's some GPA requirements that still need to be met for that kid to get that adjustment point. So that's where the ding will come. I know there's been lots of discussion of, hey, do we need to look at the APR model and make some changes so the school that takes the kid is at risk, not so much the school that they're leaving from. But those changes haven't been made. There's lots of discussions that they got to look at on that aspect. And kind of, obviously, this has only been around for 3 or 4 years. So the data is starting to come through of, hey, are these kids that transfer, are they graduating still with a bachelor degree and getting there? So that data will be kind of being pulled here in the next year or two that really kind of helps us understand when kids leave, are they still graduating and so forth. So that's kind of where the ding will come, is your APR could be hit, which if you fall below that 930 multi-year score, you can't go to postseason. So, and we do have a team in football that's very knowledgeable. It's public record, right, that we are just right above that mark of a 930, and that's the killer right there. If you fall below that and you have to miss the bowl game or something if you qualify because your APR score. So that's where the dings will come to us. So right now we've done pretty well on kids landing places. If kids don't land places, that's a ding to the university for sure.
Chase, your GPA was pretty good when you graduated, right?
It wasn't terrible. I bet yours was stellar. You had a 4.0.
That is not a true story.
Well, after 9 years, you think you could pop that thing up there a little bit.
Let me tell you something about that 9 years. That ULM screwed me by not taking some of my NLU credits. And when I had to retake those classes, I sat in the same fucking desk.
Really? That's crazy. It's a new university, though. You know what? Suck
Not
less.
bitter.
Graduate
Not
earlier.
bitter. Not bitter, Chase.
That's hilarious.
I mean, really, that's where kids are going to have a hardship. Those transfers, especially when they multi-transfer like that, they do lose a lot of credits. To be honest, they don't transfer. So,
yeah, I hate that. I mean, I'm glad they're graduating, and I'm glad the graduation rates are up. I think it's a huge thing. But you want them also to get I think most of the university degree, quality education, but a meaningful degree. Yeah, I hope that long-term studies show that just graduating is enough. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want them to be, all with university degrees doing nothing. I hope that, hope they figure some of that out.
Yeah, for sure.
I think huge academic overhauls, to put stuff, have same curriculums and all that. That's a brutal. I don't know if you even want that, but
yeah,
academic.
Personally, I think you're going to see probably a couple of years from now, legislators and university presidents probably going to be looking at those numbers, because obviously, as an institution, you want kids getting degrees, becoming good citizens of the community they're in, jobs that they're getting relate back to those degrees. And so I think those data numbers will come out, and that's where our state legislators and our university presidents will really key on what does the transfer look like for kids. Are they getting those degrees that we all want them to get and that they wanted to get when they first came? Athletics has always been kind of known that certain degrees like nursing are tough for college athletes to go get. You set them up to be able to get as far as they can. So when they do get that one degree, like a health science or something, they can roll right into a nursing program. But some degrees are very tough on student athletes just because of the time demands, the travel, the structure of college athletics, that it's tough. So coaches got to make decisions now to play. So I'll figure out the degree, just keep me eligible. What do I got to do? And sometimes as an advisor, you got to switch their degree or talk to them about that degree. Usually, an advisor's not going to just switch a degree, but they're going to have those conversations like, hey, if you're going to stay on this degree, this is what your path looks like. Because you've lost all these credits. And so you got to make decisions on what you want to do. And certain sports, they're very keen on, hey, just keep me eligible, give me the options I have, and I'm going to go with it. So,
well, Cody, I can't thank you enough for stopping by, chopping it up with us, telling us the ins and outs of compliance. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the House settlement also includes checks for players from 2014 to current. Is that correct?
It starts on July 1st is when you start paying them. But there could have been deals that are now being reached that we will enter. And obviously the third-party deals that were reached before this don't have to be entered. But starting from the day of the court signing going forward, you'll start reporting those. And then obviously the NIL deals will go through. But July 1st is technically the start date that schools can pay student athletes the rev share or reach those NIL deals. So,
wait, so am I getting paid or not?
Oh, you mean for the former players?
Yeah, former athletes.
So the settlement did agree to that, like $2.4 billion that will go back.
No, you're not getting $2.4 billion, Chase.
Yeah, so that's divided up. Obviously, the bigger schools are getting those majority of that money. But yeah, so if you put in for a claim, I can't remember off the top of my head. Only like 374 student athletes actually opted out, I believe is what it is, out of the settlement, out of like 350,000, close to 400,000 kids. So those that money that was agreed upon for back pay will start being distributed now to those student athletes. So maybe I messed up the question, but that 2.4 billion will start to be dispersed starting now, back paying those student athletes. I think it goes back to 26, 27. Or 16,
oh, dude, 2016.
Yeah, something like that.
2016.
Yeah, so
should have hung around that one extra year.
Oh, I should have just not gotten my 6th concussion. I'm so sorry, Tibbs.
So we talk about my first day on the job, right? Is the football game. Within the next couple of weeks, I get an email saying, hey, we need to get every student athlete who was part of ULM's. Every student athlete, get us the name and email and their NCID numbers within a month. So here I am. I come in, I'm trying to get all this done, and all of a sudden I'm now having to go get all this data, looking at kids that I didn't even know about, and going to, hey, going to people on campus, hey, can I get this stuff so I can submit this? Because we had to submit it by like November 1st to the NCA and to the settlement so they can start notifying everybody of the settlement. So within a month's time, I was learning names that I had no idea who they were that were here 5-6 years ago.
Dude. Dang it, Cody. I got so excited. In average, players are expected to receive an average of $135,000.
I
No
don't think
shot we would have gotten that at ULM. We would have gotten $200 and a Catfish Charlie's gift card.
You would have gotten the copy of the NCAA 26 with ULM deleted in it somehow.
Took off ULM
a used Amazon gift card with like the 7 cents left over on it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But you probably would have gotten your ULM hat, Chase.
We'll see.
We might have still charged you for it.
Yeah. Thanks, Cody.
When we started writing our thoughts down on paper, it opened up endless possibilities. Ideas could grow beyond the borders of the mind, and it changed the world. Somewhere along the way, we lost touch with paper, distracted by devices made for every purpose except for thinking and focus. On edge, waiting for the next notification. But what if new technology didn't pull us away from paper, but brought us closer to it? Listen. That's not paper. It's the sound of the new Remarkable Paper Pro, rewriting the future. A paper tablet with a true color ink display, gentle reading light, and unheard of tactility. With digital features for taking notes, thinking, and organizing, without any distractions. Paper is about to change the world again. Get your paper tablet at remarkable.com today.